What if one moment of courage could break the silence of a lonely heart? In a mansion where wealth couldn't buy joy, a stranger's kindness and a boy's quiet bravery spark a journey that redefines family. Keep reading to discover how a single rainy day changed 3 lives forever. And don't miss the chance to subscribe for more stories that inspire. In the dim glow of a Greenwich mansion, Ethan Caldwell stood frozen, his phone clutched tightly as he stared at the security feed. On the screen, his former mother-in-law, Victoria Hensley, loomed over Clara, the young caregiver, her words sharp as knives. "You're no one here. You don't belong with my grandson," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. Clara stood calm, her hand resting gently on young Oliver's shoulder, but Ethan could see the hurt flickering in her eyes. Fury surged through him. He grabbed his coat and strode toward the car, determined to stop Victoria before she could tear apart the fragile warmth Clara had brought to their home. From his Manhattan office on the 42nd floor, Ethan gazed out at a city that sparkled like a constellation brought to Earth. The skyline was a testament to his success, built from a small real estate firm into Caldwell Properties, a titan in the industry. But the thrill of deals and awards had faded long ago. Now, his days were a blur of contracts and meetings, his heart sealed behind a wall of discipline and distance. His assistant, Nora, stepped in. "The Tokyo investors are ready for the presentation," she said. Ethan nodded, his voice clipped. "Conference room, 10 minutes." Nora was used to his cool precision, a man who commanded respect but never invited closeness. Beneath his tailored suit, Ethan carried scars no one saw. 3 years ago, his wife, Amelia, had walked out, unable to cope after their son, Oliver, was diagnosed with severe autism. She left for a new life with a wealthy financier, assuming Ethan's resources couldn't match her new partner's. She was wrong, but Ethan no longer cared to prove it. His world had narrowed to work and Oliver, a 6-year-old boy whose silence and struggles filled Ethan with both love and helplessness. At home, the mansion was grand but hollow, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers echoing with absence. Oliver spent his days in a quiet room, staring out at the garden, his world small and unreachable. One evening, Ethan returned to find the house unusually still, save for the soft patter of rain. He climbed the stairs to Oliver's room, pausing at the door. The boy sat in his wheelchair, gazing at the drizzle-streaked window, his small hands still. Ethan's chest tightened. He had given Oliver everything money could buy: therapists, toys, the best care, but happiness remained out of reach. He turned away, retreating to his study, where work waited like a familiar shield. But a question lingered, heavy and unshakable. How long can I let Oliver live in this silence? Through the mansion's gates came Clara Bennett, a 25-year-old with a simple braid and a warm smile that seemed to carry its own light. Hired as Oliver's live-in caregiver, she arrived with a small duffel bag and a quiet strength honed from years of supporting her family in rural Ohio. Her resume spoke of experience with children like Oliver, but it was her gentle confidence that caught the head housekeeper's eye. As Clara stepped into the grand foyer, she paused, awed by the opulence, then followed Mrs. Ellis to Oliver's room. The boy sat by the window, his eyes distant, his world locked away. "Hello, Oliver," Clara said softly, kneeling to his level. "I'm Clara. I'm here to be your friend." He didn't respond, but his gaze flickered toward her, a tiny spark in the quiet. Clara moved carefully in her first days, learning Oliver's routines: meals, therapy, rest. He answered with nods or small gestures, his voice rarely more than a whisper. She didn't push. Instead, she brought him warm oatmeal one morning, sprinkled with cinnamon, and watched as he took a few extra bites. "Tastes better with a little care, doesn't it?" she said, her tone light. By the second week, Oliver began to look for her when she entered, his eyes lingering as she told stories of her childhood, running through fields, chasing fireflies. One afternoon, reading a book about starry skies, she noticed him lean closer, a faint hum escaping his lips. "More?" she asked. He nodded, and Clara's heart lifted. Ethan noticed the changes too. Returning home one evening, He found Oliver clutching a stuffed bear Clara had given him, a ghost of a smile on his face. Another day, he saw them on the patio, Clara pointing out clouds while Oliver watched, captivated. Ethan said nothing, but the sight stirred something he hadn't felt in years: hope. One stormy night, Clara hurried to Oliver's room with a blanket and a flashlight. "Listen to that rain," she said, sitting beside him. "When I was little, we'd splash in puddles until we were soaked." Oliver's eyes widened, curious. "Someday, we'll feel it together," she promised, tucking the blanket around him. Ethan, checking the security feed from his office, saw the moment and felt a pang. Clara was reaching Oliver in ways he never had. The next afternoon, rain drummed steadily against the mansion's windows. Clara entered with 2 mugs of cocoa, setting one beside Oliver. "Perfect for a rainy day," she said, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. His gaze followed the rain, a longing in his eyes. "Want to get closer?" she asked. A small nod was all she needed. She wheeled him to the covered balcony, where the air was cool and the rain's rhythm filled the silence. "We'll stay dry here," she teased, guiding his hand to catch a stray droplet. Oliver's fingers twitched, and a tiny smile broke through, a moment of pure wonder. Ethan, watching from his office, closed his laptop. He needed to be home. As the weeks passed, Clara's presence wove warmth into the mansion. Oliver's smiles came easier, his gestures more deliberate. Clara suggested small outings, a park, a garden, and Ethan agreed, joining them one Sunday at a nearby arboretum. Oliver pointed at butterflies, his excitement clear, and Ethan felt a joy he thought he'd lost. Clara wasn't just a caregiver. She was a bridge to a world Oliver had been locked out of. One evening, Ethan found her in the kitchen, preparing Oliver's dinner. "Clara," he said, "you've changed him. I haven't seen him this alive in years." She smiled, modest but sure. "It's not just me, sir. It's you being here, too." But not everyone welcomed the change. One gray afternoon, Victoria Hensley arrived, her presence like a cold wind. She cornered Clara in the living room, her voice sharp. "You're not family. You're meddling in a world you don't understand." Clara stayed composed, her hand steady on Oliver's shoulder. "I'm here for Oliver," she said firmly. Victoria scoffed. "You're a hired hand, nothing more. Leave before you do more harm." Oliver shrank, sensing the tension, and Clara's heart ached. Ethan, alerted by the security system, sped home, his anger rising with every mile. He stormed into the living room, where Victoria's words still hung heavy. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the air. All eyes turned to him. "Clara isn't going anywhere." Victoria's face twisted. "You'd choose her over family?" Ethan stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Clara is family. She's given Oliver more love than you ever have." He turned to Clara, taking her hand, his touch a promise. "She's going to be Oliver's mother. I'm going to marry her." The room fell silent. Oliver reached for Clara, his small voice breaking through. "Mama Clara," he said, clear and sure. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she knelt, hugging him tightly. Victoria's face flushed with defeat. "You'll regret this," she hissed, but Ethan's resolve was iron. "Leave," he said. "You don't get to decide who belongs here." She turned and left, the doors slam, echoing her exit. Clara exhaled, her hand still in Ethan's. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "No, Clara. Thank you." That night, the mansion felt alive. Laughter filled the garden as Ethan, Clara, and Oliver sat under fairy lights, sharing stories. The staff joined, the lines between employer and employee blurring into something warmer, something real. Months later, the garden bloomed brighter, sunflowers nodding in a breeze, planted by Oliver's small hands, guided by Clara. Ethan watched them, his heart full. "You brought life back to us," he told Clara one evening, his voice soft. She smiled, resting her hand on Oliver's. "We did it together." As dusk fell, they sat under the stars, a family forged not by blood but by love, courage, and a rainy day that changed everything. Thank you for reading. I'm your storyteller, bringing hope and heart to every tale. Subscribe for more stories that inspire, and stay tuned for the next chapter of love and resilience.